I'm here with Dale Quayle, the CEO of RF Code. Hey, Dale, how are you?
Great, Andy. I appreciate you spending the time today.
Likewise. I'm excited about our conversation here. Tell me a little bit about what you do at RF Code and how you're helping your clients solve their challenges.
Well, RF Code is in the data center management space, and we take a look at the health and security of the physical assets that exist inside of large enterprise data centers, servers, routers, switches, power supplies, anything that you'd look at as a physical asset. We take a look at what the performance environment looks like, where those assets are physically located, and we provide a real-time point of view on everything that's going around the most important critical asset in a technology company or enterprise financial services company, and that's the data center assets, compute power.
Great. And tell me about some of the challenges that your clients face before they meet you at RF Code. And what are some of the internal discussions that they're having at that point?
Sure. So data centers, particularly large enterprise data centers, think Microsoft or Google or JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs, any large financial institutions, are massive in size, hundreds of thousands of square feet under a roof, with tens of millions of dollars in assets in those compute environments on racks that run down aisleways as far as the eye can see. So those assets are obviously critical to the business that they support, but more importantly, they house the data that is the lifeblood of the organization. And it's essential that large enterprises know where all their compute environment is, where it resides physically in the data center itself, and what data is being processed on those particular devices. It's critical to compliance and risk audits that take place. We've seen dozens of examples where customers failed a compliance audit because they didn't know where the physical inventory is. And RF Code solves that problem with 100% accuracy to ensure that any business compliance audit that takes place, our customers will pass. And we've seen it over and over and over again.
Let's dig into that a little bit. That's obviously a critical path for companies, especially if they're faced with a compliance audit. Tell me a little bit about how you help them solve that and get 100% data accuracy.
So we provide a small device that adheres to each and every critical asset in the environment. Mostly you see them adhered to servers that are in racks. The technology then says, what the server is, where it is in the environment, what rack it is in, what the data is that's associated with that particular server. In real time with 100% accuracy. So a customer literally, if is faced with a compliance audit, can push a button. We will produce that audit information for him. He hands it to the auditor. The auditor then can walk out onto the floor and verify the information in a matter of minutes. Audits that are done manually when technology like ours doesn't exist, can take days, weeks sometimes, cost millions of dollars. And unfortunately, almost always they're inaccurate. And almost always there's an audit failure that takes place. And almost always a fine is associated with it. And that can be tens of millions of dollars. And we're not talking about a small amount of fines. So RF Code is a unique solution. It's designed specifically for data center and data center asset management. And nobody does it better. We're pretty proud of it, and our customers speak to it.
That's really exciting, and helping your clients stay out of trouble or any kind of fines is obviously critical. More than pays for itself, I would imagine. Tell me a little bit about what the business impact is for your clients when they partner with RF Code.
Well, I think you go from invisible to visible. I guess is the right way to think about it. We have clients that'll tell us prior to our environment that they felt that their asset location accuracy was 85%. Now, think about that for a second. You say, you know, that's pretty good. I get an 85% on a grade in college. That's a B, solid B. I'm good with that. But the problem is that 15% inaccuracy represents a huge gap. And anything under than 100% accuracy might as well not be accurate at all, because the odds of you failing a compliance audit with an 85% accurate solution is not 15%. It's more like 90 or 95%. So, you know, we close that gap, and customers tell us all the time that we've helped them find inventory. We've helped them find assets that they didn't know where they were. We know assets as they move from one location to another location in the data center. We keep track of those assets from the day they show up in a data center to the day they're retired. I mean, how many articles have we read about where customers have retired a physical asset only to find that that data ends up out in the wild because, you know, somebody didn't dispose of that server correctly? RF code ensures that that never takes place at our customers.
And how does accurate data center asset management impact your business decision-making on the client side? You know, they're faced with this complex environment. Tell me a little bit about how you help them solve that problem.
You know, what's interesting is if you live the life of a data center asset, let's say you're a server now, Andy, and you're being deployed in a data center. That process sounds simple, right? You grab a computer off the shelf, you rack it into a particular environment, but the reality is it's quite complex. You need to understand where that server has come from, when it arrives on the loading dock at the data center, how it gets ready to be deployed, how long it sits in the different phases of that environment, and where it gets deployed in the data center. And it's a complex process. And so quite literally, if you watch someone that doesn't have an RF code type of a system, they literally have a clipboard with a series of check marks that they have to go through that dictate the life cycle process of that server. And change orders that take place in a data center are often that results in movement of those particular assets. And if you don't keep track of those asset movements in real time, you've just created a situation where you may never find an asset again. So it's critical to the business execution to make sure you know how those asset life cycles take place inside the data center.
It sounds like that's closely tied with regulatory management and other issues around that, because it sounds a little bit like an antiquated process if they're not using your platform.
It's certainly a manual one. You know, there are other tools out there that are in use, data center information management solutions. You've got, you know, other types of asset management software out there that is available. And most of those solutions are actually pretty good if the device is connected to the network and the people that are responsible for the asset management also have access to that information. But that introduces another whole set of risk and compliance that takes place. Our product is discrete in that it is completely separate from the other systems in the environment. It reports directly the asset location management in a very unique, very secure way that is unencumbered by any of the other business processes that take place inside of the data center. So it's as I said, a highly accurate environment. It really closes the loop on governance and risk compliance issues that our customers face. And moreover, it keeps just a running track of the tens of millions of dollars in assets that are deployed in a data center. I mean, again, literally with a strict touch of a button, we can tell you what assets are in the data center, what's sitting on a shelf waiting to be deployed, what just arrived at a loading dock, what's deployed in racks in the data center, and what's being retired, all in a matter of seconds. It's actually a very beautiful thing to see. I mean, it's really interesting when you watch our customers go through that transition.
That's really exciting. Tell me a little bit, let's switch gears to the business side of this a little bit and talk about budget approvals and how companies are thinking about budget to afford your solution.
Well, I mean, you know, anything that is a operational investment into a company gets a discrete budget review. You have to have a solid return on that investment. You got to be able to support a business case. We understand all that, and we provide solutions for our customers, and we provide examples of other customers who have gone through that journey. There's a couple of knobs that get turned on the business case side of things. One, if any of our customers have failed an audit, they know the pain that's associated with the fines that the SEC can lay on them, that the FTC can lay on them. You're not talking hundreds of dollars, you're not talking thousands of dollars, you're talking millions of dollars here that can absolutely be prevented from happening because you have a solution like ours in place. Then you add on top of that, typical justification components have to do with labor associated with risk and audits compliance activities that take place. It's multiple man months generally to support an audit. It costs a lot of money to do so. They typically happen 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year for financial institutions. I think another big lever that we see is effective inventory management. It's really interesting when you walk into a data center that doesn't have our solution, how much inventory you see sitting sort of on standby on the shelf for hot swap outs, for other activities that might take place. I mean, anywhere from 10 to 15% of the value of the total inventory of the data center is sitting on a shelf in inventory, not being used. Is people that deploy our system can more efficiently manage that inventory. And it frees up a lot of cash, a lot of capital, because you don't have to carry as much inventory on the shelf as you would otherwise. So when you start writing a business case, it's usually labor reduction. It's risk management is always a big component of it. It's inventory management is a big part of it. And just overall efficiency of the data center team. Understanding where your assets are with a strike of a button is highly different than someone walking up and down miles and miles of racks in hallways looking for a particular asset, and literally can be that way.
And it sounds like you gain a lot of automated sustainability and visibility into the overall asset that you have.
Yeah, the sustainability question is obviously a big topic area now. We've talked a lot about asset management and location and what that means, but that takes us into the area of asset health. And if you walk into a data center, the things that keep assets healthy and operating is by keeping them cool. You walk into any large data center and it's like walking into a meat locker. Probably a bad analogy, but you get the idea. It's kept very, very cool in there. And there's different technologies to make sure that the coolness of a data center is kept at the most efficient level, but they do it at the building level. So building management systems say, hey, let's keep this building at a 65-degree temperature. Our software takes that whole concept down to the rack and to a certain extent, the individual devices on that rack. And we take a look at what is the cooling requirement right here, right now for this set of servers that potentially are critical. Maybe they house customer information, maybe they house financial transaction information. They're critical data, and you need to keep them cool. But you don't need to keep the whole building cool. You just need to keep those areas cool. So from a sustainability standpoint, by giving our customers a granular environmental roadmap, a heat map, for lack of a better term, they can adjust their cooling and sometimes raise the temperature of the buildings 2, 3, even 4 degrees. That doesn't sound like much, but when you start talking about sustainability, raising to those temperature level, it reduces power consumption, which saves our customer money. It also reduces the carbon footprint as they're using less power, and allows them to adhere to some of the sustainability programs that they have going on. It's a situation, sustainability is a hot topic. Our role in that is getting bigger and bigger as we see more and more of our customers using our environmental data to make informed decisions about sustainability issues.
It sounds like there's so many sides of the cube here for a business. There's the business side of it and the financial savings and impact that they have there. There's the risk management side of this. There's obviously tracking all of the assets that they have. Talk to me about some of the operational KPIs that your customers look at to be able to track their success with you.
Yeah, so probably the biggest one is, well, there's two main ones that customers talk about. Is one is, understanding where the physical assets are. So I may have said this before, if not, I'm repeating myself, but in a typical data center, 15% of the assets or more in that data center move from one location of the data center to another. There could be business reasons for it. There could be operational reasons for it. Who knows? But the data center operator isn't just looking at what's going on racks and racks and racks of servers. He's moving them from one location in the environment to another location environment. That physical move introduces risk to the data center operator. If he doesn't do that right, doesn't account for that move correctly, his audit trail is now out of sync. RF code takes care of that for him. When we pull a server out that has one of our asset reporting tags on it, we pull it out of a rack, we move it to another rack location, our system automatically detects that and reports that back to the data center operations team to make sure that all of those pieces are tied together in the form of accurate data reporting on the asset location. It is a very unique and very, very simple sounding thing. And it is simple once you have our system installed, but it's highly complex without it. And mistakes are made all the time. So and let's think about it just from a single perspective, right? Imagine yourself, you're a data center operator. You're moving a server from row 10 to row 12, U level 6 to U level 4, and rack number 15. Think about that for a concept. You move it from the first rack to the second rack, you take it over, and instead of putting it in U level 14, you put it in U level 16, just 2 notches away. That mistake is now forever built into the data that you have. With RF code, you no longer have that problem. So you ask the question, what do we do for the data center operator? We let him sleep at night. He knows that he has RF code watching over him. Think about it this way. If you don't have RF code, you have to go out and do physical asset inventory all the time. That means a guy like you or me, Andy, walking up and down those aisles, scanning barcodes, writing them down in a spreadsheet, and ensuring. With RF code, for every single server you have an individual in the form of automation technology watching that specific server. It's unprecedented. You don't get that kind of security and visibility by hand. And that's what you do for the data center operator.
It makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about when you meet a client meets you and they're analyzing whether this is a good fit for them. What does that discovery process look like? How are they looking at the solution, and how do they surface up the challenges, and how do you help them find a path forward?
Yeah, as they say, the first step is admitting you have a problem, and then having the courage to go to the next steps as you go forward. And it's probably a bad analogy, but it's not wrong. Data center operators and data center environments are very, very complex. I mean, that's the first thing you have to realize. There's a lot of compute power in there. There's switches, routers, power supplies, PDUs, APUs, crack units. I mean, you name it that exists inside that white space. And it all has to work together in a finely tuned orchestration. And when it's done right, it looks great. But a lot of times, history and time takes a toll on data centers. Things happen, things get moved around. It's really difficult. So as we work with our customers, we see them go through a progression. And the first one is to, as I said, admit that they have a problem. And that's the hardest step. What we see from a technology standpoint is our customers also go through a progression. They start off first doing things manually, maybe on an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe they graduate from that to a barcode reader that scans a barcode, and then that feeds into the spreadsheet. That gives them another level of dynamic. Maybe they have a data center information management system that's integrated in with a barcoding system of some sort. But you have to think about it. Even though those barcodes are there, even though you've got a scanner in your hand, somebody still has to walk around that building scan that barcode with a barcode reader and make sure that he doesn't get the U level 1 versus the U level 2, because that's going to mess things up, right? So we see our customers go through that progression. Why? Way less expensive than buying our system. Our system is accurate. It does a really, really good job, but we're not cheap. It's a big expense that a customer have to go through. So they have to recognize that they have potential problem, that they have a point of failure that they need to address, and we go through it. Now, what's really interesting is there's always that customer that will say, hey, we don't have a problem. We know where everything is. We know exactly where it is. And, we'll challenge them sometime and say, okay, let's go for a walk and see if we can find everything. Sometimes they do a pretty good job. Other times, not so much. And, but all times when customers put in our solution, and I can say this with great confidence, when they put in our solution, they have an environment that is a multitude more accurate than what they had before. And you can just see it on their faces when they go through.
And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than failing a compliance audit.
And a whole lot less painful. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a CIO of a large organization. He told a story about how they failed an audit one time. And the data center operator came to him and had to be the one telling him, the CIO, that, hey, we failed this audit and we got a fine coming our way and it's going to be a big one. And it was then up to the CIO to go report to the board. And after that experience, he told me, he goes, we had a metric inside of our operations from that point forward. And the metric was the CIO never goes in front of the board to report a failed audit again. And I thought it was an interesting metric. But failed audits are financial problems, but they're also pretty darn damaging because they have to be reported publicly. And if you're a publicly traded financial institution that depends on the security and auditability of your technology, and you fail one and you have to report that, sure, it costs you $50, $60, $70 million in terms of fines, but what does it cost you in terms of brand reputation? How do you put a number on that? I mean, if I was on the other side of that screen and I had an opportunity to say, hey, we have a system from a company that ensures we're 100% accurate on our physical asset inventory, I would advertise that. Say, this is what we're doing to make sure that we never fail an audit. Our customers don't do that, of course, but I can dream, right?
Absolutely. Well, Dale, this has been a pleasure talking with you here. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing to help companies level up their infrastructure, and really appreciate you talking with me today.
You bet, Andy. I hope everybody gets a chance to look at this. We'll pick up the phone and call me. I'd love to. I obviously love this topic area. I enjoy spending time on it. And so anybody that wants to talk further about it, I'm happy to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you.